welcome. Thank you again so much for allowing me the time to interview you on your experience in planning and executing this amazing virtual fair that you were able to put on for our students and our families in New York City. It was such an amazing event. I was able to sign in as a participant, and from my side, it looked flawless. It was amazing. So thank you again. And to begin, I'm just going to have you all introduce yourselves, and we can move on from there. So I'll have Danielle, if you want to start.
Sure. Hi, my name is Danielle Holman, and I am the Director of Admissions at the TEAK Fellowship.
My name is Enya O'Riordan, and I'm the Director of Data and Admissions at Breakthrough New York.
Hey, and I'm Alan Garcia, Assistant Director of the REACH program here at Regis High School.
Great. All right. So talking a little bit more about the virtual academic enrichment fair that was hosted on December 2nd. So just a little stats for our viewers. So we had over 1,500 New York City families and school administrators register, and over 850 registrants joined us live. And I know that you also graced us with some welcome addresses from Rep. Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Gutierrez, and 3 other parent speakers that were able to share their experience of being parents of students from the different programs. So to begin, what was the thought process behind the fair? What made you all decide to organize it now and together?
So I guess we came together because, there are a lot of organizations in New York doing really great work to address issues around accessing equitable educational opportunities for students and families. And so about 2 years ago, Danielle and I started thinking about ways to bring more of these really great programs together, just to get all those opportunities in front of as many students and families as possible. And we knew that, trying to bring all of our programs together didn't have to be, a zero-sum game where, applicants were only considering one opportunity versus another. We knew that there was just a really great opportunity to bring our programs together for families. So we started last fall, in fall 2019, by hosting a sort of enrichment program fair geared towards guidance counselors and school administrators, with the idea that they would take those opportunities back to the students and families they worked with. And Alan and the REACH program were one of our participants at that first event. And so I know that he was super excited about how that event had gone. And the 3 of us decided that our next goal was to bring this type of fair directly to students and families. So we had been thinking about this type of event for quite a while. And while our original plan was to hold the event at the Regis school building this fall, that obviously did not happen. So we knew by this past summer that we were going to be planning a virtual event. And I think the time still made a lot of sense. Obviously there were additional challenges with making this event virtual, but we knew that, this moment we're in right now really called for even greater urgency for this type of opportunity for students and families. The types of inequities that our programs address are not new. They've been there forever, and the pandemic just shed more light on them. So we thought it was still a really critical time to connect students and families to new programs and supportive communities that could help them.
Great, thank you. I mean, and honestly, it's something that I know a lot of the families and administrators at schools are very appreciative of, to be able to, I know a lot of them are seeking all of these academic enrichment programs. And so to have all of them housed in one fair, I know a lot of people are very appreciative of it, so they can see, what they would be interested in and where their students could apply to. So thank you so much for that. So this question's for Danielle. So what did the process of organizing look like? Do you think that you had enough time to plan and promote the event?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think echoing what Enya had shared, it was really just an idea that the 3 of us were excited about. And I like to share that because I think there's this perception that to pull off a big event or to, if you think about the big picture issue that we're trying to address, like educational inequity, that can seem incredibly daunting. You know, if you're starting with that, then you don't even start. But starting with, you know, we have some great programs, and let's see how many parents we can get in the room to share what we offer. And it kind of exploded from there. And I remember in our first planning meeting, Alan was like, let's shoot for 1,000. And both Enya and I were like, okay, I don't know. Yeah, that's a little ambitious. But then, you know, we got to 1,500. So it was really kind of Alan's big vision for how big it could be that kind of got us thinking about how, you know, how we could reimagine what this event could look like. In terms of the process, it was a lot of logistics. We had started thinking about this idea before the COVID-19 pandemic had really hit. And so we were intending for it to be an in-person event, and we weren't quite sure, you know, in March exactly when an in-person event would be possible. So at first we're like, okay, well, you know, we'll put things on hold and maybe it'll be possible. And then as the spring went on and we saw, okay, you know, in-person is not going to be possible, we thought about how do we coordinate, you know, all the technology that's necessary, knowing that our target family, so low-income families all over New York City, might have different, you know, technology needs or barriers that would affect their ability to participate in our program. So we thought really critically about, you know, how do we make sure that it's accessible? How do we publicize the event to make sure people are seeing it? How can we do all this without any budget? That we had no money necessarily allocated for this event. But I think through kind of our own collaboration, as well as getting some great stakeholders outside of the three of us, but just great collaboration from some of the other organizations willing to publicize in their networks, some really fantastic, you know, really volunteers through the Regis network that were, you know, offering their guidance and helping us publicize the event in local publications and things like that. And that's how things really took off. And then in the last 2 weeks before the event, we really saw the numbers of students and families interested, you know, skyrocket. And so that was really exciting to see, you know, how much interest there was in the event. And then what was the second part of your question again? Just to, we think we had enough time to plan and promote? Yes and no. I mean, I think it was something that we thought about for months. And so in that sense, we did have a lot of time, but it, you know, right down to the wire, we're like, oh my gosh, there's this thing that came up and this other thing. And so I think, you know, things come up at the very end, but I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish. And I think that, like I said, it just goes to show, you know, if you have the idea and the willingness to kind of push to see that idea through, you can really make a pretty big impact.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you could definitely feel it, and you could see it with people connecting in first in the main room and then in the breakout sessions. I mean, you definitely had this plan. You definitely executed it well. So it was really amazing. Okay, so this question is for Alan. So what was the experience like in reaching out to both Representative Hakeem Jeffries and Dr. Nancy Gutierrez for the welcome addresses?
Sure. So overall, I'd say tremendously positive, tremendously kind of exciting and humbling. And, you know, when you think about bringing such high profile folks, speakers like that, and when you think about never having met them, you know, a lot of the spirit, as Enya and Danielle have mentioned about this event, was rooted in just people's generosity and people buying into this idea. And so fortunately, you know, through the Regis network, really through a friend of a friend, I was able to connect with Hakeem Jeffries and with Nancy Gutierrez. And even though they had never met me or us, the fact that they bought into this idea was inspiring, right? So right off the bat, there was this buy-in. And then just the actual logistics. I mean, I think anytime you're dealing with a congressman or someone that works in government, expect anything to happen, particularly now, particularly during the pandemic. I'll share a funny story of, you know, obviously both speakers had intended on joining us live, and we were really glad that Nancy was able to join us live. And even with Hakeem, to think about what's going on right now in Congress, to think about everything that's happening in government, again, him and his team and their willingness to help us out was huge. So really day of, you know, you have, you know, stimulus relief going on, you have everything going on, even just locally here in New York. And his team put together this video for us, I want to say less than an hour before we went live. And so when, when we talk about really going down to the wire, they didn't cancel, they didn't postpone, they didn't say, oh, we have, the country to save, which would have been totally understandable. But they made it work, and they made it work for us, and they made it work for this idea of just how many families we can serve, how many communities we can impact. And so to get that type of cooperation from these folks that clearly are very busy, clearly have a lot to do, and have never met us, right? Like, you have a few email exchanges here and there. You have a few, obviously late night text message and emails being sent back and forth. But we're building this rapport with these people while this event is happening. And it's all rooted in what this, again, this idea of what this could be. And so it definitely obviously helped us in the short term with some notoriety and some real, kind of firepower as far as making the stakeholders really believe in this idea. But even longer term, I think it's influential for local government officials, local school administrators, to really see, wow, look at how this was able to come together. Look who's advocating for it. Look who's behind it. And so I think, even as we think longer term, having their support was not just a one-time thing. I know we've even heard from both of them post event of just let us know how more, how more we can help. To summarize, it was positive. They were always on board. And then even when things got a little shaky, to know that they were willing to work with us in whatever we needed, in whatever capacity, is certainly influential moving forward. And I know I speak on behalf of all of us when we say, even just live, the words they shared were truly inspiring. To see all your hard work come to fruition live during the event, and to hear how much they're buying into this idea really makes you think this is the start of something big.
No, definitely. And I can also say that it was very motivational and inspirational to hear them speak. I know, especially with Dr. Gutierrez speaking on her experience in being part of a program and being able to live her dreams of going to whatever college of her choice. And now look at her, she's a doctor. And so giving back to her community, I know that was very inspirational for a lot of us. And so we thank you for allowing, for working so hard in trying to get them and accomplishing them to speak to us with the welcome addresses. So that was very appreciative. And so this next question is for Enya. So how has your perspective on technology changed now that you experienced putting together a major event that ran entirely through Zoom? How was that?
I guess now that I've recovered from a lot of the planning on Zoom, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just like how much, whenever you're undertaking like a whole new idea for an event, let alone trying to translate what you had in mind for an in-person event into online, I think you're always going to bite off more than you can chew. So like we only did our first practice webinar like 2 days before the actual day of the event. And about an hour before the event, we got granted a Zoom free trial to get an extra 300 families to be able to join us live that night. So I think beyond just, some of the obvious like lessons learned around technology, I think in terms of how it's made me think about technology, I think big picture, our programs work with families facing, so many different types of access and equity issues. And I think that all of our programs have probably always had a pretty complex view of the role of technology in our work and the role of technology in getting word out about our programs. We know for a fact that the move to virtual and hybrid learning has had a disproportionately negative effect on students from low-income households. So, what does it mean for us to put on this big, crazy event, but have it be online, which raises, the exact type of access issues that we have for the families we work with around technology. So I think it brings up a lot of those same questions and concerns. I do think that it's interesting to think about the ways that technology gave more families access to this, and then also some ways that we can improve some access barriers families may have faced this year. So I think about, families not having to travel to join an in-person event or to take time off of work or to use their Metro card to get there. I think about families being able to access recordings and all the event resources from that night because it was all digital. So just because it didn't work with their schedule to be there online or in person means they can still access every resource really easily afterwards. I think about the fact that families, we had a bunch of families just call in who might have been on the move, who might have been, making dinner or doing other things. And so I think as we consider growing this event in the future, I think we'll just have to continue to unpack each of those accessibility issues related to technology, just to make sure that we have a really good understanding of every advantage of the technology and every shortcoming of it, so we can navigate those barriers. So whether that means, we're doing an in-person event that's also streamed live, whether that means we can get really good recordings from an in-person event. Maybe if we could even get funding for families to get MTA cards to come to the event if it were in person. There's so many different ways we can think about addressing those barriers while still leveraging some advantages that technology did present this year. So I think in terms of how it's made me think about technology, I think it's just helped all of us really unpack even more all those different, benefits and setbacks around technology that we have to overcome.
Great, thank you so much. So this next question is for Danielle. Is there anything that you might have done differently in planning? What's a highlight from the evening of the event for you?
Yeah, I think the highlight for me was the parent panel. So we had 3 parents who had children at different ages. So we had a parent of a middle school student, a high school student, and a college graduate. And so they all reflected on their understanding of how they've seen their children grow through enrichment programs. And I think it was so powerful to hear their perspective on this experience. And they definitely highlighted some unique and distinct differences in their experiences, but there was also that through line of the support that they felt from the organization, the growth that they saw in their children, and then also the support that they felt as a family member. It wasn't just about their child's growth, but also the way that they felt supported as a family. And so I think, as someone who works at an organization that's supporting the family, I felt really, inspired and encouraged about the work that we do. But I also felt that it was really reassuring for a lot of families that were in the audience, because I think some of the opportunities that we talk about in terms of, going off to maybe an independent school or going off to college eventually can seem like these huge ideas that seem really far away and challenging. And I think that our parents' perspectives made them a lot more accessible for our families. So I really appreciated that. And in terms of what I would do differently is just, I would, now that we got to 1,500, okay, I'm like, next 2,000, how can we make it bigger? How can we have more programs? So I'm so grateful for the 12 programs that participated. And I think there was, a beauty in it being relatively small. I think if it was, 50 programs, maybe that would have felt a little overwhelming for families. At the same time, I think there are so many great nonprofits, great organizations, and community-based organizations out there doing really cool work. And it's just hard for families to know all of those opportunities. And so, maybe in the future we'll have multiple events on different nights with different themes, or even more catered to different age groups. So I think that the success of this evening just made me inspired and excited to continue to plan different ways of reaching families.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for sharing. And we can open up this question to you, Alan and Enya, as well. Is there a particular moment during that fair that is a highlight for you both?
So during the event, I think, I have to echo Danielle with the parents. As inspiring as it is to hear from these keynote speakers, and as inspiring as it is to collaborate with our colleagues, I think, when you really hear the parents speak so personally, and, as Danielle mentioned, as being a practitioner of this work, as the parents are talking, you kind of, you see what they're saying in your head. I remember those young people when they were just, confused and didn't know what to apply to. And then you kind of help usher and walk a family through. And it's really a two-way street. You're obviously assisting this family, but then every family is inspiring you in a different way and helping you in your practice. So as each of the parents are talking, I'm reliving some memories, some really, really great memories in my head while they're talking about the different ways we've interacted with families. So that was certainly really neat. And then I think the second thing is when I think about getting the panelists together, and also the fact that many of us had never met each other really, certainly maybe not in person, or even if so, it's just been digitally. And so to think about the cooperation and kind of collaboration it took for the almost 30 panelists to all huddle minutes before the event and then just kind of like, go team, and just kind of go do this. I mean, that's radical as far as all of us just believing in each other, believing in this. So those two things really stick out to me.
Yeah, I think to echo what Alan said, like I'm just extremely like proud and impressed and not shocked by how great all of our panelists and presenting programs were. You know, we tried our best to like from behind the scenes as the folks planning the event, like support them and give them the reminders and instructions that they needed. But everything feels hard to be fully supportive of someone when you're working virtually with them. So I was just really excited by their flexibility and enthusiasm. And I think the other thing that stands out to me is a few of us got together like after the event ended just to share some like initial feedback we had on the event. And I think it's really powerful. Like we had a good mix of like really big, you know, more like well-established programs in New York City, some newer organizations, each of us kind of serving different types of students and families or serving them in different ways. We're all learning how to plan this type of event, you know, as we go along. But I think in the future, it would be cool to think about, you know, there's a certain amount of us that have, you know, a really great reach in New York City and will continue to grow, but how can we also use this platform of this like network of organizations serving students and families to really help elevate programs that are smaller and growing and serving other needs that our programs might not be serving. So that was really cool to hear from kind of the smaller programs, how exciting it was to have that platform.
Great, thanks so much for sharing your highlights. So this next question is for Alan. So looking ahead to the future, is this something that you think could happen in person?
Totally. And I think that now that with the success that we've had so far with this virtual format, I actually think an in-person event would present novel challenges as well, as novel as some of these challenges were here. But I think anytime you have the opportunity to meet in person, you can really, you know, put some real texture and some real context to those relationships and the rapport. But as I was thinking about during the 6 to 7 p.m. hour of the event, how we had hundreds of people in different virtual rooms, I thought to myself, because I was actually, you know, where I am here at the high school, I said, we wouldn't be able to do this, I think, so seamlessly in person when you don't really know how many people are going to show up. So there are some unexpected factors that the virtual format, as long as the licenses for the Zoom webinars accommodate, people are just plugging in from wherever. When I think about the physical building here or thinking about other sites, you'd have to really map that out a little bit more strategically of just capacity. And, you know, in today's day and age with this idea of social distancing and keeping people, you know, I actually think in many ways the virtual format alleviated some of those headaches in some ways. But no, I think certainly I've been trying to game plan for eventually when we do something in person and with this new normal of wanting to respect social distance and what that looks like. I think we can pull this off in person. You know, fortunately, we do have the high school here. It's funny when Danielle was saying 2000, I actually thought to myself, what is our fire code here? What is our actual limit? And how much could we stretch that? But it's a whole high school. I mean, it's a 5-floor high school. We could certainly do it. It would be different, but I think equally as exciting. But then also to echo what Enya said earlier in our conversation about, do we imagine a world where, yes, you have something in person, but it's also being recorded live stream, or you record it and then you also package that so that it lives somewhere more or less permanently and you can send it out virtually. I think a lot of this remote instruction and Zoom has really made me think you kind of have to do both now because you can, right? As long as you're responsible and intentional about both, your reach allows you to do that a little more seamlessly. And, you know, something I think I mentioned on the night of the event, we had 15 100 plus registrants, I believe every family that showed up, every teacher, every educator that showed up knows at least one more person who could have benefited. So right there, you're at 3,000. And, then that just grows. And so I think we have to, it's really our responsibility to think how to do this both in person and virtually in the future. Because now that we've done it, we can't say it can't be done. It can be done. And it's everything that's been said with a little bit more planning, with some money, right? This was done for free. Really, the sky's the limit.
I definitely agree. Thanks so much for sharing. And we hope in the future to see something similar again with, if not more, the same programs for future students. And so this last question is for all three of you. And we can start with Alan since he's at the top of my screen and work our way down. So this question is, do you have any advice or last words for New York City families who might be interested in learning more about the programs and or how to apply?
Sure. So the number one thing is don't be afraid to ask questions, right? I find myself a lot of the same advice I give my students when they're in the classroom of, no question is a dumb question. Ask. You never know how someone will be able to connect you to something, even if they themselves can't offer what you're looking for. I mean, that too was a lot of how this program grew. It was, well, let me just ask if this person is available or if this person's interested. And, that one ask prompts another ask and prompts another ask. And before you know it, everyone's peeking over and saying, how can I get involved? How can I help? And so never be afraid to ask. And then, you don't know what you say no to, until you ask. And so I know sometimes there's some fear or just some hesitancy on families to try something new. And I think that's across the board. That's for everyone. So don't be afraid to try something new. Particularly with our program, the first thing that students have to do in the REACH program is live away from their families for 3 weeks. And so you can imagine the barrier that creates right off the bat. But the more you learn, and the more you meet other families, you meet other students, your worldview can really open. And so don't be afraid to ask, don't be afraid to try. And again, even if the person that you're asking might not on paper have something that you're interested in, you never know who they're connected with. And so they can be a resource in other ways. And I think that's a lot of the beauty of this too, is I am now connected with colleagues that offer things that I can't, right? Our program doesn't serve a female population, doesn't serve young ladies. And so I'm always trying to serve a population that I literally cannot with my program. And so I'm now connected to these wonderful individuals who have programs who can do that. And so, we're modeling kind of that collaboration amongst us. And so I think families see that. And so they're a little bit more willing to do it themselves.
Great. Thank you. Any of you want to take a stab at this?
I think a lot of my advice for families would be similar to the advice that was really a through line that all of our parent speakers shared, which is that, we're in such a challenging time right now for students and families. And I think all of the parents who spoke that night spoke to this idea that, your student is going to face, joys and challenges, through all their educational milestones, whether or not you pursued an enrichment program. But we hope that you will find a program and community that will support you through all those big steps in your student's life. Our parent speakers just talked about how it was so nice not to walk that path alone, or with a little bit more light, with the help of a supportive community or with another enrichment program. So I really encourage families to explore more enrichment programs. I think on our end, we're trying to do a better job every year of making sure that we are removing barriers for families to learn about new programs, to bring lots of programs to you in one place at the same time. And it's something that we're working on, but I hope that families will advocate for what they need from our programs, will reach out to learn more, to figure out what is really the best fit for their student or family. I hope that they'll consider the networks that they already have to find opportunities for their students. So whether that's talking to your students' guidance counselor or a teacher who thinks your student is really talented, whether it's someone in a faith group or another group outside of school that can help connect you to opportunities that can support your student and family. So I just hope that we'll continue to get closer to families with all of our programs. I would also recommend that, you know, we only had 12 programs participating this year, and we hope to kind of fill that out with programs serving a wider range of students, different program models, some programs that you apply to, some that you just show up for. And so Inside Schools has a list of hundreds of free enrichment programs that you can search for across grade levels. And so I hope that we'll be able to grow this to serve families well over the next few years. But there are lots of opportunities out there. So I hope that in the meantime, that families will be able to find resources for other programs.
Great, thank you. And Danielle?
I feel like all the great things have been said, but I just echo, you know, ask questions, apply. There are a lot of great resources out there. And we, you know, it's not just about the face of the website. There are people behind that who are excited to answer your questions and offer support. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I have for you this afternoon. I want to thank you again for carving out some time and being able to talk more about your experience and the future of the Academic Enrichment Fair. So thank you again.
Thanks so much, Megan.
Thank you.